The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan's magnum opus, widely considered to be the best comic book movie ever made. And besides bringing us classic comic heroes, The Dark Knight also introduced some of Batman's greatest villains to the Nolanverse, like the Calculator, the Eraser, Black Dynamite, Scarecrow's van, and even a crossover from the Marvel universe with the villainous Half-Face, and they were all perfect. But there was one villain that I wasn't as much of a fan of, the Joker. Now listen, was the Joker a completely fresh, fully realized, well-written, perfectly costumed version of Batman's greatest foe, made all the more excellent by an outstanding performance by Heath Ledger that would go on to define the character for a generation of filmgoers? Yeah, it was so definitive that according to legend, when Jared Leto was cast as the Joker in Suicide Squad, instead of trying to one-up Ledger's performance, Leto decided to instead make a bunch of nonsense noises and send used condoms to his coworkers, the kind of behavior that was so disgusting, Sony immediately cast Leto as the lead in their next Spider-Man spin-off movie. Anyway, was Ledger's Joker great? Absolutely. Was he perfect? Well, I'm not so sure. I think the character is wrapped up in a couple of issues. I think the Joker's origin was vague and confusing. I think his plan was littered with plot holes. And I don't think the Joker's skill set made for a particularly interesting finale. But I believe there was another Batman villain who could address all of these issues. So, if I could make one small change to The Dark Knight, it would be this. The villain terrorizing Gotham City would not be the Joker, but another classic Batman villain known as Kite Man. So I'm going to give you some background on the character, walk you through why I think Kite Man would have made a better villain, and try to give you an idea of what this new version of The Dark Knight would look like. Starting with the origin. Now people miss this, but there's actually a big mistake in The Dark Knight, and it deals with the Joker's origin. You see, at 3 different points in the film, Joker gives us some Crimes of Grindelwald level exposition in the form of monologues about how he got those scars. The problem is, and I don't know how this got past the script supervisor, his explanations contradict one another. When Joker tells Black Dynamite about his scars, Joker says that his father was a drunk who cut Joker's face open. But when Joker tells Rachel too about his scars, Joker said it had to do with Mrs. Joker not thinking the Joker smiles enough, a reference to this scene from Captain Marvel. And later in the film, Joker's explaining his origin to Batman, and legend has it, Heath Ledger was about to tell a third version of the story, but Christian Bale, anticipating Ledger's mistake and already angered by someone making noise on his set, heroically improvised shooting Ledger with those little gauntlet spikes so that Ledger wouldn't mess up that scene too. And Joker's 3 origins are a problem because it makes it difficult for the audience to empathize with the Joker. If we learned anything from Hollywood in the last few years, it's that characters should not have ambiguous backstories. We should know every single detail about every single aspect of a character's backstory given to us through either heavy-handed foreshadowing or ideally scenes where all of the main characters go into a mausoleum and explain their backstory to each other for what feels like 45 minutes. Where did Han get his signature blaster and ship and friend and last name? Was Voldemort's pet snake a Korean lady? Ambiguity is bad. And spoon-feeding the audience information they did not ask for is a proven method for success. Think about it. Solo was so good that Disney knew they couldn't top themselves and decided to take a break from Star Wars movies for a while to give the other studios a chance to catch up. Very gracious. And I understand why writing the Joker's backstory was difficult for the writers of The Dark Knight. The Joker has never had a succinct backstory in the comics. Sometimes he's a gangster, sometimes he's a failed stand-up comedian. It's complicated. The writers should have chosen a villain for this movie with a clear and relatable backstory, and luckily, Kite Man has only one backstory as long as you don't count the second one, and it's super relatable. So instead of making something up, Kite Man will read his Wikipedia page. And here's how I would have written this scene. Kite Man crashes Harvey's party, he takes a flute of champagne and drinks it, glug glug glug, and someone says, "Who the hell are you?" To which Kite Man replied, "You want to know how I got this kite?" For those of you who don't know, this bit is all real, so buckle up. I mean, this entire video is all real, but this bit is double real. Anyway, Kite Man says, "You want to know where I got this kite? I, Charles Chuck Brown, am a man who armed himself with kite weapons to be used to commit crimes. I fly with a big kite strapped to myself. I also use a barrage of kites to overwhelm my enemies. I have run afoul of Batman, Robin, Hawkman, and Hawkgirl on different occasions. My weakness is trees." You can also say, "Why so serious?" because it sounds cool. cool. Pretty simple. Audiences will be able to understand Kite Man and his love of kites, and they will be able to understand why he does what he does. We all get stuck in a tree from time to time. Now, instead of being a one-dimensional villain, Kite Man becomes a multi-dimensional anti-hero. Number 2, plot holes. No less than 10,000 cracked articles have pointed out that the Joker's plan in The Dark Knight doesn't make very much sense. It relies too heavily on coincidences and what is essentially the Joker's ability to see the future, and that's not great. And I know this is gonna ruffle some feathers on film Twitter, but I believe a coherent plot is better than an incoherent plot, unless the plot is supposed to be incoherent by design, like The Crimes of Grindelwald. Then do whatever you want. But a coherent plot where the universe follows some sort of logic is good. And I'm not saying that this movie needs to have the Prestige-esque level of attention to detail. Not every director can manage something like that. I do think it's fair to say that some of these plot holes could use patching. A big exciting bank robbery that demonstrates how clever the villain is probably shouldn't end with the villain driving a school bus out of the wall of a bank into a herd of other school buses. The bus should drive away from the other school buses to avoid rush hour traffic. It's 100% the dumbest thing I've seen in a Batman movie that doesn't involve a credit card, ice skates, yabba dabba doo, a sink, laundry karate, the Flash, fruit roll-ups, him again, this extra, or Alfred uploading his consciousness into a computer. It's real dumb. Also, not to nitpick, not unlike my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, but who is this guy? Why does he have a gun? Is he the Riddler? Probably. And also, not to nitpick my nitpick, not unlike the podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, but why does the Riddler have a gun? Isn't he supposed to use a cane? Isn't he supposed to have a green hat? Come on, Christopher Nolan. Anyway. Also, how did the Joker escape from this party? I mean, Joker and his team of armed goons enter the party full of rich people. Batman knocks a couple of them down, including this stupid punch. Then Joker throws Rachel 2 out the window. Batman dives down to catch Rachel 2, and luckily their fall is broken by the nice cushiony roof of a car. And Batman just lays there while the Joker is still at the party. Come on, Bruce, why don't you get up and try to stop the Joker? I mean, the scene ends there, so maybe he does, but what about the Joker? How does the Joker escape the party? All he has is this gun, this knife, his shoe knife, and a team of armed goons. This isn't an easy situation to get out of, like a mafia meeting or something. These are high society types. This is essentially an entire room full of Bruce Waynes. How does the Joker make it out alive? It just doesn't make sense. And unfortunately for the writers, the Joker isn't known for his getaways. He's known for his tattoos. But you know, who's the best getawayer in Gotham City? Probably Catwoman. But then, I'm gonna say it's a tie between Black Spider, Clayface, Deathstroke, and Firefly. But then, somewhere in the low teens is Kite Man. Even when it doesn't seem like Kite Man has a kite, he has one tucked away in his backpack, and Kite Man activates the kite and flies away. Imagine this version of the bank robbery scene. Kite Man kills his last henchman with a razor-sharp kite, puts a kite into the Riddler's mouth, uses an exploding kite to blow a hole in the wall of the bank, and then a kite materializes out of his back and he flies away. Kite Man can even comment that the parade of school buses in the street below doesn't make any sense and say, ding, that works. Now, instead of having your immersion broken, you can focus on the plot. And finally, challenging Batman. So to figure this out, we first need to ask ourselves, what is The Dark Knight about? Some say it's about defending your principles. Some people say it's a story about our heroes dealing with different kinds of justice. It's a Batman movie, so let's also throw in masks or whatever. But I think those people are missing the bigger picture. What is The Dark Knight really about? The Dark Knight is about throwing people off buildings. Almost every action scene in The Dark Knight ends with one character throwing either themselves or another character off of a building. It happens constantly. Joker tosses Rachel 2 off a building, Batman drops Maroni off a building, Batman hangs the SWAT team off a building, Batman tosses himself off a building to stop Scarecrow's van, Joker tosses Captain Hockey Pads off a building, Batman extradites the Calculator by throwing both of them off a building, Batman throws this dog somewhere, Batman throws the Joker off a building, and Batman knocks Harvey Dent off a building. I imagine this has something to do with all of the buildings in Gotham City. That, or it's a symbol for hope? I don't know. There's a symbol there. I'm too lazy to look it up. So I tweeted, twitter.com/NandoVMovies, please follow, asking you guys what the buildings in The Dark Knight symbolized, and you gave me some great answers. So yeah, those things. And while the Joker challenges Batman on a moral level, he isn't really a challenge when it comes to being thrown off a building. Batman does it with ease, and that's not great. I talk about villains in a lot of previous videos, and one universal rule of writing a good villain is that they need to challenge the hero on multiple levels. You have T'Challa and Killmonger, good old Spider-Man and Ronald McDonald, Falcon and Thanos. The villain not only threatens the hero's point of view, a good villain also threatens the hero's point of not being dead. Joker is missing that level. He isn't a threat to Batman since Batman can easily just throw Joker off a building to end the fight. But if only there was a villain who Batman couldn't throw off a building, one who becomes even more dangerous in the air. Luckily, Batman has just such a villain, and his name is Kite Man. Kite Man presents a new problem for Batman to solve. How do you defeat a villain who you can't throw off a building? This question challenges everything Batman thought he knew about villains and buildings. And this dilemma forces Batman to grow as a character. In the end of the movie, Batman can come to a realization he also needs a kite. So now, instead of this bit where the movie turns into a video game, this movie ends with a kite chase. To throw back to that classic moment from Batman and Robin where Mr. Freeze jumps out of his spaceship and sprouts a pair of moth wings. At first, Batman and Robin don't have any good ideas, but then they realize they also have to create moth wings, but they don't have any, so they snowboard. So this movie ends with a kite chase. And Kite Man has a huge advantage since he is way better at kites than Batman. But Batman can remember what his good friend Azrael told him. Oh yeah, Azrael should have been in this too. Anyway, Azrael tells Batman the classic kite-related advice. Kites rise highest against the wind, not with it. So then, Batman flaps his kite and makes a gust of wind that pushes Kite Man into a helicopter blade, which slices Kite Man in half. And I know I say this all the time, but I really mean it this time when I say, I believe Kite Man was originally the villain in this movie, but it was changed to avoid confusion with the Peanuts movie that was set to come out in 7 years. If you look at this image, you can see that Heath Ledger's character is in midair. Which other Batman villain is frequently in midair? Killer Moth, and also Kite Man. And look at how his arms are outstretched, much like a certain toy consisting of a light frame with thin material stretched over it, flown in the wind at the end of a long string. That's why I want us, the fans, to rise up and demand Warner Brothers let Christopher Nolan realize his vision. I'm sure Warner Brothers can repurpose that mustache removing technology into a kite adding technology. It can't be that hard. And make sure to tweet images of Kite Man to Warner Brothers to get this some real attention. Share this video on sites like Reddit. Our videos is probably a good place to start, but get specific. Maybe a kite subreddit, mealtime videos, you have options. If we all talk about this nonstop, maybe in a couple years, we can create a real movement that not only doesn't get us the movie we want, but gets me attention and maybe even enriches me somehow. Do the right thing, Warner Brothers. Hashtag release the glider cut. As always, thank you to everyone that continues to support the channel on Patreon. You guys are the best. If you want to see your name up here, get access to videos early, other cool stuff, throw in literally any amount of money at patreon.com/NandoVMovies. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. As always, subscribe to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. Every week, me and my co-host DJ pick apart a piece of pop culture by looking exclusively at the details. April's going to be insane. We've got Shazam, we've got Hellboy, we've got Avengers coming up, so definitely listen to that. We're at Nitpicking Pod on Twitter, and you can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now, obviously, today is April 1st, but I got a lot of other cool stuff happening in April specifically of this year, so make sure to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/NandoVMovies for updates on all that stuff. I'm really excited about it. That's all I got. I'll see you next time.